Good morning. Welcome to our audience here at MetLife in Cary and those who are joining and connecting over WebEx. We are delighted that you are joining us today. I am Daisy Magnus-Aryitey. I'm the co-executive director of Code the Dream. Code the Dream is a national tech nonprofit based right here in the Triangle region of North Carolina. At Code the Dream, our mission is simple yet audacious. We seek to create opportunity that changes lives, to build the technology that benefits our community, and support the diversity that drives a more just and innovative world. Our program is a unique model for upskilling and reskilling individuals to prepare them for careers in technology. We offer free classes and paid apprenticeships to people from low income and diverse backgrounds so that they can start careers in tech. We also build technology for our nonprofit partners to help them accelerate the good that they do in the world. I am enormously proud of the work that we do at Code the Dream, and I honestly could go on, but there's one aspect that I want to highlight today, one thing that I think is particularly pertinent to our conversation this morning. Over 50% of our staff and participants at Code the Dream are women and people from gender diverse backgrounds. We are intentional about creating environments where people from diverse gender backgrounds can succeed and develop into to reach their full career potential. We strive to see a world where our students and apprentices, our alumni and volunteer can really reach for those tech roles and grow in their companies. We want a world in which gender diverse individuals are able to reach the highest career potential. So we know that this vision is realized only in community, only when we work alongside other tech companies to build the industry that benefits all of us. That is why it is with great pleasure that we present today this roundtable with industry leaders on gender diversity in tech. We designed this panel to create a space for conversation to discuss the best ways to support people from gender diverse backgrounds in technology careers and how to actively challenge the systems that promote bias and inequity. Our goal today is to discuss ideas that lead to actionable strategies in order to create environments where all of us can flourish. With that, I'm excited to introduce this distinguished group of tech professionals based right here in the Triangle. First, Phoebe Thermitus, Director of Project Management at Lenovo. Anika Wall, VP of Production Enablement for Global Customer Service and Operations at MetLife. Tamecka Taylor, Group Technology Manager, Development, Engineering, and Computing at Truist. Sarah Chick, Senior Manager of Strategic Engagement at Research Triangle Park, and Sweetie Browne, IoT Sales at Cisco. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to start with giving you a chance to share your background. I know that we all take different paths into our careers, and I want to know, starting with you, Phoebe, how did you get into tech?
Thank you, Daisy. For me, getting into tech started with a natural love of math that I had. I loved math, but I loved the logic, the process, the solving problems. And that's what led me to do my undergraduate career, my degree in math and computer science. And it really wasn't the writing the code, it was the debugging and the analyzing what was happening, which led to my first job at IBM, in which I was in our level 2 support organization, working with customers, doing exactly that, helping them to solve their problems. Some of that continues to extend my career throughout, but that is how I got in tech, just by sheer pursuing a love and passion that I had for problem solving and logic and process.
Anika, can you tell us your story?
Thank you, Daisy. So for me, I am very results driven. And the first time I took a programming class in college, the ability to write code and, as old as I am, compile it and then see it run and having that result come back to you, very quickly was just so incredible to me. It was unlike any other career I think I could have chosen, where I actively was in control of creating something and then immediately seeing the result of it. And I've loved it ever since.
Tamekka?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My path to technology was not one, has already been discussed. I started my career, my college career, going to school for physical therapy. But in my sophomore year of college, I ended up having a child. And so that forced me to make some tough decisions. I had to go back home. I had to transfer universities and ultimately change my major. And so one of the majors that stuck out to me, because I was good at math and science, was computer information systems. So I got my BS in computer information systems, and a week post-graduation, I started my career as a Unix system administrator at IBM in Poughkeepsie, New York. That's how.
Good morning, everyone. So my path is exceptionally non-traditional. I actually, before getting into tech, I was a clinical therapist for 12 years. So my dad was an engineer for Hewlett-Packard, and I just thought that tech was really beyond me. But it actually took a lot of burnout in 2016 and another woman giving me a chance at an entrepreneurial tech company to leave my clinical life behind and start into a new space. So over the last 7 or 8 years, I've really been able to lean on the other women in the industry to support me. And also I have a phenomenal leader currently who lifts me up whenever he can to put me into this space and utilize the skills that I have. I didn't really need new skills per se. I just needed to take the strengths I already had and retune them and recalibrate them into something else, and had people believe in me to do that. So that's how I ended up in the tech space.
Hello, everyone. And I have a similar story. I started off in healthcare, and Cisco came calling in 2012, and I thought to myself, why not? And so for me, it was very non-traditional path. My degree is in psychology. And when I started at Cisco, I was very much interested in technology. I didn't study technology in school, but I've always been fascinated with how things work behind the scenes. And I was the one, oldest of 4 girls, helping my dad to build things around the house. So when tech came calling, I said absolutely. And I've been at Cisco since 2012.
I'm so encouraged listening to your stories and all the different paths that you've taken to where you are in your career right now. You started in different majors, different cities, and took different pivots along the way. And it's fascinating because now you represent some of the biggest companies, not only in the Triangle, but in the world. And so from your perspective, I want to ask you to brag a little bit about your company. What is one policy or practice that your company has enacted that has resulted in greater inclusivity of women and gender diverse individuals? What is one point of pride for you?
And feel free to jump in. I think the investment in inclusive communities, or ERG, which is Employee Resource Organization, has really helped create a space for minorities from underrepresented groups. And so for me, I think that's the one thing that Cisco has done a really, really amazing job at. I lead WISE, Women in Science and Engineering, globally for Cisco. And I call them my tribe because I feel it's a space for me to empower, encourage women to not be afraid to go after those leadership positions. And so for me, I think inclusive communities, or what you'll call employee resource group, is one thing that Cisco has done right when it comes to being intentional about diversity and inclusion.
I agree. I am very proud to be a MetLifer. I've been here for 9 years, and when I first joined, I was sharing with other members of the panel that I used to say that I met life when I joined MetLife, because the culture here is just amazing. We've done so many great things. We recently rebranded and relaunched our Women's Business Network, and there's just an exciting strategy behind supporting professional women across the enterprise. But we also have a lot of our senior level leaders are joining boards, like for example, Girls Who Code, to really show their support and enthusiasm behind increasing the numbers of women who get into STEM fields. And there are just so many things that I'm proud of that MetLife is doing, and I love the intentional way that they have been staffing senior level executives. So when I look up or look across, I can see other women in the profession across the enterprise, and that just really just gets you excited about coming to work every day.
And I'll add to that. At Lenovo, very similar story is the employee resource groups. It is a part of the coming to work, but it's also knowing that it's not just a networking group. It is around bringing the different employee resource groups. I'm involved in our Women in Lenovo Leadership, so I'm on the board for that. I'm also very active in our Black Leaders Achieving Success in Technology, our BLAST. But we have employee resource groups across women and the diversity groups, and it's the commitment of the leaders and the involvement, not just for those who are part of those groups, but the allies and the support that happens around there, and seeing the business performance as a result and the networking that happens across the company of being able to just understand more and more about the business because of the involvement with the employee resource groups.
I too also had that as my comment. We call them at Truist business resource groups. We have 8 dynamic groups spanning Asian Americans, serving the veterans. I'm a member of BOLD, which are our Black organizers, leaders, and doers. I'm a co-advisor for their business strategy there, and I'm also the volunteerism and co-advisor for women at Truist. And so I think that it definitely, those groups definitely help our purpose at Truist of building better lives in communities.
I think one of the things that I was most proud of in joining RTP at the foundation was really that the park really is led by women. Although we do have a male CEO and he's wonderful, and my boss is a male, we are primarily comprised of women, and so I knew that there was space for me to be there. Additionally, one of the things that I lead as a co-chair is our RTP DEI collective, and that allows us to span the reach of DEI work in the park and belonging in the park and really reinventing what that looks like in RTP or what maybe historically has not been there. Spanning across the 375 plus companies as a collaborative effort. And so being in that space on a monthly basis and being able to learn from other leaders in the park with some of our larger companies and their ERG work like Cisco and Lenovo. And just being able to be in that space and hold that space for other park companies to grow and change what RTP looks like, I think is one of the most impactful things I've been able to do in my time there.
Thank you all for sharing. I think you've all sort of touched on this idea of collectives, of ERG groups, of affinity groups being really transformational within your companies. They become spaces for mentorship, for sponsorship, for networking, et cetera, all things that really help to grow somebody's career. And I'm glad that we are seeing a growth and a greater structure and buy-in to ERGs around in the industry. So my question is sort of the flip side to that then. We as an industry are still falling short in terms of having gender diverse individuals represented within tech companies and within tech roles. So what is one policy or practice that should be enacted in order to increase representation?
You, of course.
I agree.
Yeah, partner with you. I think being intentional and really looking in a community to see what nonprofit, what companies such as Code a Dream that are plugging into underrepresented communities and saying you have the potential to be in tech and investing in those companies, even tapping into early in career talent. right, across the community, because I feel we can do a much better job if we take the time to really, I know we have a partnership with you all, but I'm sharing that to say I feel we can do a much better job if we just took the time to learn about those companies. We have a lot of them that are here that are serving our communities right in our backyard. We just need to do a better job of creating awareness and visibilities for those companies, because that's how you create their pipeline for diverse talent into those tech companies or into companies like Cisco and ours.
I love that, because I also think about measuring. There's one thing to create the partnerships, but you hear how once you set goals, then you reach those goals, but then you keep moving the line and you continue to move forward, because that's how we're also going to make a difference, is setting, not just having the groups for the purpose of having the groups or just attracting, but how do you measure that? How do you ensure that here's our goal, but don't settle when you reach the goal, expand the bar even further than that?
Thought of a way that we could improve would be to start at an earlier age. Start going out into the community where, you know, underrepresented people can see there are people in these roles that look like you. There's a Black woman who came to my school today who is a boss at, you know, at the lower level. Kids don't know exactly. I'm a group technology manager. They know she's a boss at her job, and I want to be a boss. I want to be a leader, so I can do those sort of things because I saw that she can do it. So I think starting a little bit earlier, not always waiting until kids get into college or when someone thinks of a career change. Maybe we can start planting that seed a lot earlier.
And I think, too, it's all about not just saying that you're going to do something, but actually being invested and taking action. Like, for example, at MetLife, we are partnering with Inroads. And so it's bringing those kids in, yes, at the college level, a little bit late, but bringing those kids in as interns and nurturing them and supporting them through an internship in the summer, but then offering them a job, right, before they even graduate. So that it's not just you're supporting their growth and development, but you're really going to put your money where your mouth is and offer them a position. And I think that's what's key, is not only clearing the path, but creating the opportunity for someone to advance.
And just to add to that, like you said, it's not about creating the job, but it's very important to also create a team of people that is going to support that person, right? Because you have underrepresented groups or even women coming back into the workforce and not knowing exactly how to do the job. And they're afraid to say, I don't know how to do this job you've hired me for at MetLife or at Cisco. But creating that space to say, guess what, is your development team. They're dedicated to you for the next 6 months to a year to make sure that you are successful within this role. And to your point around representation, I will go to schools and talk to students, and I share with them I have a degree in psychology, and I go, and how did you end up at Cisco? And I say, yeah, not the food company, the tech company. And they get excited about that, right? I go, okay, well, I can do it too. So for me, it's really important to not only just bring someone to the table, but also wrap your arms around them and say, guess what? We are invested in your development and your trajectory within this company, and we can help you create the career path you need.
I love that, and I love even as we do that at all levels. Because when we talk about these policies and we talk about getting them in, great. We also need to make sure that we're doing this as we're growing and developing them throughout their career as well. Because and this is one thing going back to even our employee resource groups and things that I know that we've done at Lenovo, it's looking at that middle career person, the person who is there, they're in, they have the initial support, they're not executives yet, the now what? And so making sure that we don't lose the fact of being able to cultivate the middle and continue to grow and support and help elevate that experience. And I love what you said, but throughout their entire career journey.
And that is so critical, because when you think about it, you know, and to your point, when you were saying creating that job, right? So you promote someone into a role, and then it almost becomes a sink or swim kind of scenario where it's like, okay, I gave you the job, go do it. Right? But you saw something in them they may still come into the role with gaps in their knowledge, gaps in their experience, and they really need that support structure in order to be a success and in order to grow, to achieve, success to the next level. You can't just put someone in a role and then say, you're good, go do it.
I think to touch back on what Phoebe said originally in her first comment about just the intentionality, we know that the Triangle is exceptionally diverse. We have more four-year HBCUs than any other state, and we still have people that are looking to other states to hire talent. So we're, being intentional about the relationships. We have a partnership and with Code the Dream as our STEM grant recipients for 2 years, and looking at how we can be equitable, reach for people who cannot reach for themselves at certain points in their path, and creating not just a job, but an opportunity, and being able to give that opportunity to someone who may not have otherwise been able to reach for it. The intentionality behind those relationships is crucial. And also elevation through that career trajectory, like you were saying, that middle person often gets lost and thinks, well, where am I going to grow next? And oftentimes it looks like somewhere else. Because there's not enough advocacy within the company. We gave you this job, do the job. And sometimes that's not enough. So there has to be a growth trajectory as well for that diverse talent, and being able to have that support, not just on the development aspect, but to continue and have a sense of belonging while you're in that space.
What a fruitful conversation. Just that one question was, so many great points were brought out about the importance of visibility, even for young children, the importance of developing people throughout their career, not just bringing them into a job and then leaving them. And then most, I think, sort of the thread that I see, and Phoebe, you highlighted this point, is that there needs to be metrics around that success. It's not enough to say, oh, we hired 5 people. We want to know in 6 months, how have you invested in those 5 people? How have you connected them with sponsorship? How have you built their talent? And so I think it is crucial that we create really hard metrics around where we want to go as an industry and how are we approaching those goals. So we talk a lot in technology about data and metrics, but I want to pivot a little bit and hear some stories. I know that, as gender diverse people in technology, we face bias, we face inequality in different ways. Can you tell us a time when you were ignored or bypassed, and what lessons did you come out of that situation with that you can share with others?
I'm laughing at this because I was just thinking about this question when we got the information from Pam. For me, I had went for a role, and my experience was very much, even though I've been in tech for since 2012, I have never worked for a Black woman. And I purposely wanted to work for a Black woman at some point in my career. And I thought it would be a unique experience. And so I went for a role, and I was told I was the last candidate, a top 2 candidate for the role. And I didn't get it. And I cried about that. And the reason I did, because I thought that I needed to learn something different from a Black woman than I've never learned from any of my leaders, who have been amazing, by the way, both men and women. But I think for me, I wanted to see the lens of what it meant to be in such a leadership role as a Black woman, and I guess vicariously live through her, and in the sense of, absolutely, if she can do it, I can do it. Representation matter. And when I didn't get that role, it took me a minute to sit back and really think about what does that mean for me going forward. And I learned that it is not about the person, the color of the person that you're working for. It's more along the lines of the person who's willing to see you, create a space for you, invest in you, and make sure that you are where you add value and impact to their team. And so for me, I had to change the narrative of oh, woe me, I didn't get hired by this Black woman. I had to change in a way of saying, you know what? I want to work for leaders. I want to be part of an organization that really understands my strengths, who I am at my core, and the things that I care about outside of work. Because work is what I do. It isn't who I am. And so for me, finding that in a leader, that is what matters to me. And that was a tough pill to swallow, but I think I came from, out on the other side of that, just again reminding myself that it is okay to show up in places and really find leaders who are genuinely true leaders and are willing to invest in you, and vice versa, in the sense of you taking the time to invest in others as well.
I think one of the things that I learned was not staying where I don't belong and where I'm not valued. And I think a prior work experience that I had, there was really no room for growth. There was a lot of, we're going to dump every single job on you and then just see how well you can do, and this is where your job's going to stay. And I remember having a conversation with a professional women's soccer player at the time, and she said, stop trying to do everything and start perfecting your strengths and just go where you're celebrated. And so part of it was crushing to feel like I had worked so long towards a job that wasn't really celebrating who I am, but the reward was actually gaining the strength to leave that space behind and go where I was celebrated, and really to feel some nurturing and empowerment and learn from leaders that I may not have traditionally thought I would have learned anything from. And really just work on owning who I am and what my strengths are, and simultaneously owning what my weaknesses are and allowing other people to thrive in that space where I'm not as strong.
I couldn't think of one particular situation in which I was bypassed or ignored, but I know that has happened quite a bit. So what I did was, how I handled that was, I took that time to find my voice, because I could have been ignored because I didn't say anything. I was waiting for somebody to ask how I felt about something or to give my, my expertise. And instead, I took those situations and those challenging times to focus on like you said, my strengths, and be confident in what I bring to the table, and always provide input when needed, because I do have something to offer.
So I'll take from a little bit of everyone. I have been working for over 30 years. So if you think about the number of times that I've probably been passed over, the number of times that I've had to take a step back just to take 2 steps forward, which I honestly think that taking a step back is still movement. Right? It's like, it's not moving forward, but you're still moving, right? And sometimes you can learn from that. But what I will say are the lessons that I have learned from the different paths that I have taken, because it hasn't been a single straight line path in my career. It has been lots of back and forth, side to side, making a lot of decisions, and really reflecting and learning more about myself, and learning more about the value that I can bring to the table. Starting out as a young programmer just out of college, I didn't know my value. I knew I could sit down at a computer and I could write some code, I was pretty good at it, but I didn't know my value. And I didn't know that, I could be a leader of an organization. I can lead people, and we can deliver a lot of great things. So even though you get passed over, to your point, it can be that you're passed over because people don't value you. But I also take a moment to reflect on my own value. What skills do I bring to the table? Did I voice those skills? Did I let people know that I had those skills? And then also, what are my gaps? What don't I know? What skills don't I have? And how do I fix that so that next time I'm ready? Next time I'm the best candidate in the room and they can't pass me over. Or if I'm being passed over, even though I have the skills and I have the experience, then am I at the right place? Working with the right people. And if not, don't be complacent. Don't just sit there and stew in it and be mad about it. Get up and go. Move. Be willing to make that change. And I was sharing with you all, I had left IBM and came over to MetLife. I had been at IBM for 16 years. My mother and father both worked at IBM. It was the family business. leaving IBM not only was a shocker for people that I worked with, but my parents were looking at me like, you're doing what? You're going where? You know, it's like that was the dinner conversation every night. We talked about IBM. And I'm going to another company, but I knew that I wasn't valued where I was. And I had to make a change. Was it scary? Yes, it was. But I have loved my journey ever since I got here.
I love that, because when I thought about this question, just to piggyback, one of the things that I realized is when that has happened, because I believe it's common, whether we realize it or not, it happens. It caused me to do a couple of things. One, I strengthened my internal and my external network. I've not necessarily putting all eggs in a single basket of saying, okay, it has to be this team, this department, but even whether that caused me to branch out stronger internally to have supporters and allies who were there for me, or even externally in building the network and saying either I'm not alone or, oh my gosh, it's time, you know, it's time to do something different. But that network, my network has grown probably every time I realize, because I may not realize some of those things. And the other thing is it caused me to do is to be intentional of recognizing when it's happening to someone else. And so my impact and some of the things that we've done, even whether as a manager, as a mentor, as involved in our employee resource groups, has been because I was there. You don't need to be there. You don't need to see that. You don't need to be looked over. So how can we create the programs, create the networking, create the mentoring opportunities so that you don't have to suffer alone and thinking that this is just you. No, something either has to change. Maybe it's upskilling or identifying, closing your personal gaps, but maybe it's the getting you out of that situation. But a part of that has been, what has it done for me? But I'm so grateful that because of having what I like to call those valley experiences in my own career, is actually positioned me to help others not stay in that, you know, not to get in it at all, or definitely not to stay in it, because that does make a difference. If we can do these things together, talking to these ladies, recognize we've had so many things that are in common, and so building that network and being able to have accountability or just the support really does make a difference.
Wow. Absolutely.
I heard from everyone on here is know your worth at an early age. I wish someone told me that as well when I was in college. Know your worth, learn how to articulate your strengths, and be your biggest advocate. And be your biggest advocate. If you're not, no one else is going to be. So I think that's, for me, that's the key takeaway, no matter what age you are or where you are in your career, from early in career to middle to senior leadership. Know your worth. That is one thing no one can take away from you.
Thank you. What a beautiful summation, sweetie. Absolutely. Know your worth, advocate for yourself, and then advocate for the person next to you. And if all that boldness, if all that advocacy doesn't work, bust a move. Right, Anika? You gotta go where you are valued.
Doesn't work, just call your tribe.
So speaking of tribes,
Yes.
we know that there are folks in the industry who desperately want to see change. They want to be good allies to women and gender diverse individuals.
Yes.
So what is your best advice for allies? What are some ways that they can make an effort to help gender diverse coworkers feel safe and accepted in the workplace?
So one of the things for me is show up. Don't wait for an invitation. Show up. If you are an ally for a group, be there. And I'll use an example. We just celebrated International Women's Day. We're in Women's History Month. If you are an ally and your women's employee resource group is celebrating, go. Don't necessarily have to wait for an invitation. You know, you should be able to be there and be supportive of them. And the other thing that comes to mind, in addition to showing up, is to recognize just because it's different doesn't mean that it's wrong, doesn't mean that it's bad. You want the diversity of thought. And so if you're in a room and 90% of the people are saying one thing, and then somebody who looks diverse says something different, doesn't mean this person is wrong. Listen. Be able to understand, okay, well, this is a different perspective that's coming to the room. And so just pay attention and recognize that just because it's different doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Yeah, and I would say being an ally is one thing. You know, love being an ally, but I think we're in a day and a time when women need sponsorship. They need someone who is at a level to be able to go into a room that they don't have access to and speak on their behalf. And the only way that you can become a really good sponsor for another Black woman is to get to know them, right? You have to expand your network. You have to get to know the other women that are in your enterprise or even, in your area, and get to know what their skills are and support them in their growth, and then speak for them when they can't speak for themselves.
I simply just thought maybe listen more. Just listen and know that real change does start with you. I think sometimes people think that, oh, I can't do anything, it's just me, right? Change starts with you. So listen more and start with yourself.
I think intention and action are really huge. So when I think about my boss, for example, amazing, talented HBCU graduate who is also in a leadership position, who consistently looks to me and passes up opportunities to speak in public so that I can speak in public, or will make space for me when other people have only included him and not myself. So to be an ally to me means to put action forth and be intentional about where you make space for people, and I think that's crucial. If you're constantly in a spotlight or constantly finding your way into those rooms for those conversations, asking for a +1, asking for somebody else to take your space, and being able to amplify somebody else's voice.
I have 2 points to share on this because it's one of those things where I'm a huge advocate for other underrepresented group within, especially within my community. And one point is that you mentioned sponsorship and the importance of sponsorship. At an early age, no one told me that a mentor could be a man, right? And so for me, I sought after mentors who are all women. And so my advice in that space would be look for mentors and sponsors who are different from you, who are different appearance-wise, but also different views, right? Create your board of directors, because that will help you plug into different areas of yourself that you may or may not see when you look in the mirror or when you're talking to people who know you. So that's one piece of it. So for me, that sponsorship and mentorship starts with you identifying people that you genuinely want to learn from, and being intentional, going back to that word about being intentional, and sharing with those people what are your goals. What are those things that you want to do? Here in the Triangle, I was part of an organization with a bunch of women, and I remember sharing with them, by the way, I would love to do a public speaking one of these days at a major university. Be careful what you ask your tribe for. And I ended up speaking at UNC Chapel Hill, and I would never forget that. And it was such an amazing experience. So I no longer suffer in silence. I no longer think about it and go, I can't do it. I share with people. I share with my tribe, and my tribe includes men. It includes people who I wouldn't necessarily say look like me, and that is okay. And the other piece that you touch on is around the action. When it comes to being an ally, showing up is definitely your way of saying, I'm here for you, I see you, and I have your back. I do the same within my community. I'm part of Pride, I'm part of Conexion, because I want to be able to, even the green team, I didn't know there were bird houses that you can figure out around the Triangle area. Again, curiosity. But I say that to say you show up for them so that way they can show up for you as well, because you get to learn something when you show up and take action and say, I have your back. You learn from those people, and that's what, to me, true allyship is.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Absolutely. As I read, as I listen to this panel, as I sort of, lock into different podcasts and articles, et cetera, allyship is not the passive word that we've made it become. It is not somebody kind of whispering in your ear, oh, I support you. Allyship takes boldness. Allyship takes action. It's about sponsoring somebody. It's about including somebody in your network. It's about taking somebody out to lunch. It's about listening to their dreams, listening to their trajectory, and seeing how can I be an active partner in helping you get to where you want to be. And so let's begin to kind of move away from this definition of allyship that doesn't cost anybody anything. If you want to be involved, it should cost you something. It should be, I'm going to give up my speaking spot, like you said, Sarah, to give it to somebody else so that their voice can be uplifted as well. Pam, I'm going to throw it to you right now. Maybe we can get some questions from the online viewers.
Yes, we have received some questions. This one is very interesting. I know you all have probably received some advice, but what was the worst piece of advice you received while starting your tech career? What did you do with that advice?
Yeah, mine was this org is brand spanking new. If you're the first one in the door, you will be the first one out the door if it doesn't work out. So don't go for that role. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? I'll jump and grow my wings on the way down. And it was successful as far as the organization. So that was the worst, but I took the chance anyways.
I think the worst for me was people telling me, let it go. Whether it was in context of, a quarrel at work or something that a male counterpart had said, letting it go is not always the best response. People need to know what line they've crossed, what boundary they've crossed, and why it's inappropriate. Otherwise, change is not made.
I don't think I necessarily have one piece of advice, but any type of talk that tries to take you away from being your authentic self, or you're too loud, or I wouldn't do that if I was you, or why did you, who does your hair, or, are you think that's okay? So anything that's trying to draw you away from being who you are, who God made you to be, I feel is negative talk and terrible advice.
Absolutely. I would say mine came when I first started to grow my family after I had gotten married. And I had a male manager at the time, who said I might want to slow my career down a bit so that I could focus on my family, as if to say I couldn't have it all. And so I didn't work for him much longer after that. But that's bad advice, because anybody can have it all. You just have to figure out how to get it all.
And it's interesting, as I'm sitting here listening, I'm like, which bad advice did I get? But knowing me, I probably got it and went in one ear and out the other, and I ignored it. So from that perspective, I do agree with stay true to your authentic self, and why can't we have it all? If it's meant for us, it's meant for us. So but knowing me, I ignored it.
Another question. We've been engaged for a bit we focus a little bit on women in tech, but what about non-binary and trans folks? How are your companies dealing with that kind of gender diversity? Are there conversations in your companies about pronouns, and are gender-neutral bathrooms at your organizations?
For me, I'm still learning. I come from a space of I want to learn, and I see the person first, and I ask, in some cases, what would you like to go by? And sometimes I don't always get it right, and I'm okay to say, my apologies, I didn't recognize this is how you identify. So I think within our company and within our ERG, Employee Resource Group, across the company, I think it's really important that these folks that are in this group are recognized and also seen. And it's okay when you're on a call with them and you don't know what to use, which pronouns, just ask. For me, I'm learning and I ask. I'm the one in a room going, time out. I don't know, can you please share? Can you educate me for a second? Or can you point me to a resource that I can better understand and be able to articulate the way you want to be represented? So for me, it's a learning process.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in our space we do have gender neutral bathrooms. There are ERGs that exist. But I think also education is the huge piece. People get so scared to ask that they're going to say something wrong or offend somebody, and I think it's honestly more offensive not asking. And also leading by example. So on Zoom, I always have my pronouns after my name because I want people to know it's just one action I feel like that's a small space to show you are an ally or that this is a safe space to be yourself. So leading by example, asking questions and not being afraid to say, I don't know and I'm not sure, but I would love to learn more.
I would say our culture is bring your whole self to work. Doesn't matter who you are. Just show up, do your best, right? Bring your whole self, be authentic.
And same thing at Lenovo. Lenovo also has employee resource groups, but it is bring your whole self to work.
How can we stand out and improve on networking?
Oh, good one. I'm speaking to all of my introverted people out there. As an introvert, extrovert, don't tell anyone. Learn who you are, learn how to articulate who you are, and just take the first step. Have those conversations and close with your trusted friends and sharing and how you want to show up and things that you care about. And I think coming from a place of articulating who you are makes it a lot easier than trying to fit in when you walk up to a VP, for example, right? And so for me, I always go to the things that I care about when I introduce myself to people. Believe it or not, I was very shy. I think I still am in certain spaces. But for me, it's really tapping into who I am. So I find commonalities in people. So I'm an artist. I'm a creative soul. So when I meet people, instead of saying, I work at Cisco, I go, I'm an artist. I paint, and I cannot make money off of painting. So I work at Cisco. What do you do, right? It's being able to, again, tap into genuinely who you are and being able to articulate that and not worrying about who the person is as far as their title. Once you do that, I promise you can walk into any space and have those conversations and really tap into building your network, because I genuinely believe the power of your network. When we leave here, I'm connecting with all of these women on LinkedIn, just so you know. But yeah.
And what I love about that is be authentic about it. Because people can tell when you're faking. You're like, oh, let me just go to these events, passing out business cards. Like, okay, it's different as opposed to being authentic in the networking. And when you know who you are, then you can be authentically there. Like for me, my tagline on LinkedIn says I'm a motivator, I'm a difference maker, and I'm a connector. Because at the heart of who I am, regardless of, yes, I'm at Lenovo, but where I'm working, or where I show up as my focus is on motivating others, making a difference, and then making the right connections along the way. And then that helps the networking, not just for the moment, but the relationships that can be built as a result afterwards.
I'll add to that post-COVID, I feel networking has been a bit hard since we've been a bit isolated. So what I would say is step out of your comfort zone. I went to a conference last year. It was a IBM Power conference, and I went there, and the majority of the things that they were speaking about at the conference, we had already had a separate engagement, and I knew a lot of the things that were already being spoken about. And so I said, well, how can I take advantage of this conference? And I said, you know what? I'm going to reach out. I'm going to meet every single person here. And so over the course of the couple of days that I was there, I met each person. I got to know them. And I said, at least when I leave here, I might not have new knowledge, but I will have new connections. And so that's what I did.
And networking is an action word, right? So you have to take action. So to your point, you reached out to those folks. It's up to you. I cannot stress that enough. It's genuinely up to you, and people are willing to help when you put yourself out there. But it starts with learning your strengths, learning your passion, and voicing that and articulating that whenever you have the opportunity to do so.
And I would add just about putting yourself out there and being an introvert. I started out as an introvert. I don't know if I can claim that anymore. But raising two kids to not be introverts. There was conversations in the home about when you go to a party, don't hug the wall. Get out there and dance. Don't care what people are, doing. If they're looking at you, they don't think you can do the moves, because nowadays dances are just outrageous. But just get out there and do you, right? And I would say that it comes with networking, that if you stand against the wall and you're not open to having conversations with people that you don't know, you will not grow your network, right? Find a topic. People love talking about themselves, you know? So go up and start a conversation about them, not you. Listen, right? You were talking about listening. Listen to them, talk about them, get to know them, and you'd be surprised at some of the things that you might have in common that you'll find. But just standing against the wall and staying in that introverted box, you're never going to grow your network.
Yeah, I think listening is key. I always try to focus on being transformational and not transactional. So a lot of times if I do go to a networking event, which I shy away from sometimes because I am also secretly an introvert, I often feel like someone's trying to sell something to me, or I'm trying to be sold to, or there's business cards flying everywhere and I don't even have mine with me and I'm just trying to have conversations. So I think leaning into that authentic self and just trying to be transformational in your connections and not so transactional is key to feeling comfortable in the networking space.
And it is okay as an introvert. I'm an extrovert, introvert, but I'm an introvert because I also know where I get my energy from. And so what that means is if you are introverted, go to the events, network, but if you need to step back to refresh in order to refuel and go back at it, then that's okay. And that's what I've been able to do because, like I said, I am okay in my bubble. I don't stay in my bubble. I just was at a conference last week. Great opportunities, great leadership, engagement, but I also found my space to refuel and then go back at it. And so you don't always have to be the extrovert in order to even just do the networking. Just recognize, once again, who you are and be authentic to who you are and then own that space and maximize it intentionally.
I love that because then you can turn it off and on. And sometimes as an introvert, you have to do that. Mm-hmm. It can be exhausting networking because you're on, right? Mm-hmm. But then, to your point, take a step back, go relax, rejuvenate, and then go right back out there, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said, say to people, I have a lot of quiet people who will get on conference calls and things like that. And they're like, how can I be more visible? How can I let people know who I am? Never come off of a call without saying at least one thing. Ask a question, make a point, do something, but make that your goal, that if you're going to go to an event, if you're going to join a meeting, whatever you're going to do, you're going to say one thing so people hear from you and they can put a name to a face, right?
Or wear bright colors and people just come to you.
I wanted to add one thing. I think that a lot of folks up here are introverts. Our preference is to sort of be at home. That's definitely me. But networking is part of the role. It's part of the job. And so what I'm really encouraged by is that networking is a learned behavior, right? Like you can go into it with a strategy and you can turn it on and then turn it off. And so over time, I've learned that, when I go to an event, I'm going to talk to everybody who's wearing red. And that might be 5 people in the room, but I know that's what I need to do. I have one, a 30-second pitch about myself and one interesting question to ask people, and then that's it. That's the networking. It does not have to be, you don't have to be the life of the party when you step into every room. That's not necessarily what networking looks like. The other thing that I would add to that is the art of the follow-up. That is what separates, great networkers from just good networkers. Following up over email again and again and again. We all get busy and, one email may get lost, but you ping somebody every 2 weeks for like 3 months, they're going to remember you. And you don't have to send them a very long email. You could just be like, hey, I saw this great article. I just wanted to share it with you. Oh, this weather was beautiful. I went out running. Did you do anything? That's it. That's all the email has to be. 2 words or 2 lines every 2 weeks is going to get so far.
Well, we definitely want to thank you all for showing up, because you certainly have. You are role models. You are inspirational. Can you share with us what are some of the keys for becoming industry leaders like you all are?
Good one. Really, really good one. I believe we are all leaders, and there people managers and there are leaders, but I believe we are all leaders. For me, it is, I cannot stress enough, starting that work with you. Learning who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And I don't mean the weakness where you turn into strengths during an interview conversation, but I genuinely mean what your weaknesses are, those areas for improvement and opportunities to grow. I think that's where true leadership starts. And then taking the time to plug into your community. I've been in my community making an impact in some shape or form my entire life. I don't know how not to do that. So even at whatever company I'm working at over the years of graduating and moving into a role, plugging into my community really helped me hone in on some of those leadership skills, meaning how do you collaborate with others? How do you sit and listen to others and take action? How do you identify when it's time for you to execute and when it's time for you to just listen and take the feedback, ugly feedback, right? And so for me, I believe genuinely it starts with you and doing the work and really plugging into, one, your community, and then how you're showing up at work. Because guess what? Our jobs, they're what we do. We love our jobs. But at our core, it isn't who we are. So learning who you are, that starts to really showcase your leadership skills, in my opinion.
I think that's amazing because it truly is a difference between becoming a leader and all of the steps that you have taken to elevate yourself into that position and being a great leader. And now that I am in the role, every morning I wake up and I say, how do I be that person that everyone says I want to work for? How do I be that person that everyone says she was the best manager I ever had, right? So once you get to where you want to be, figuring out how to be the best at what you're doing, right? Not just the job, being the best leader, whether it's listening, whether it's collaborating, whether it's being an ally, and sometimes like I just had someone come into my office and she just closed the door and sat down and had to share some really tough information. And I was busy, right? But saying, you know what I'm working on is nothing compared to what you're going through right now. And that's the kind of leader that I want to be. I want to be that person that people feel comfortable walking into my office and closing the door and saying, I need a minute, right? I think that is the kind of leader. How do you become that and continuing to work on being the best that you can be?
I love that. I've always said, leadership is not a title. So don't think you have to get to a role in order to lead. Exactly. You can lead right from where you are. And so that goes to knowing who you are as well as the impact that you have. For me, a lot of that has been just that, recognizing who I am, the uniqueness that I bring, and then showing up and then leading the people around me as individuals and seeing where they are and helping to grow them as individuals. Whether I was a manager, a mentor, or just a colleague, it is being able to see and address the uniqueness of others as well.
To also add to what everyone said, I think a lot of leadership is not built during the 9-to-5 work hours. What are you listening to? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you taking courses that are helping improve your leadership skills? Who are you around? Iron sharpens iron. Are you around people that are uplifting you and having you think of things in a different manner? Do you have a good team that when you come into a challenging situation that you can say, hey, how do you think I handle this, right? Having your own set of checks and balances, right? Because just because I'm now in this leadership role doesn't mean that every time I do something, that's the right way to do things. So just, continuously learning and spending time away from work, improving yourself.
Lastly, I'll just share, I think that one of the biggest pieces to being a leader is sustainability, and I say that outside of the environment. Being able to sustain that position is key, and I think that looks a lot like leaning into who you are, being authentic and showing up as yourself, whatever that looks like. The past therapist in me never dies, and so leading with empathy, being authentic, wearing my heart on my sleeve, and showing up every day and empowering other people to do the same makes me feel like I can sustain that leadership position. I had an article published in TechWire a few weeks ago about being a soft leader in a hard corporate world, and I think that that's really what the world needs more of. Is I feel so often that women feel like they have to put on this brave face and be a badass and show up to work and act like men, and for me, it's the opposite. I show up as a very tender heart, let people know that this is a safe space. Hi, I'm going through these messy things, and this is what I look like today. And I feel like showing up as that authentic leader allows me to sustain that, and sustainability is key for me.
Excellent. We are unfortunately out of time. This has been a better conversation than I could have even dreamed of. I think there was just so many wonderful takeaways, and I could see the audience really nodding. I think this was a very, very just enlightening conversation. So I want to thank you all for your time. I want to thank our hosts, MetLife, for giving us this wonderful space and this wonderful platform. We want to continue the conversation, and I hope that we can get together and network and just continue to have these really great conversations and spark these really great ideas. So thank you all again for your time, and thank you all for joining us online as well.
Absolutely, and shout out to Pam. She did an amazing job.
Yes, shout out to Pam.
Thanks, everyone.